William Afton, known across the globe as an infamous child murderer who had somehow managed to evade capture by superheroes, the police, and even the army for years. His motives are unknown, but what is known is that he kidnaps children, killing them and attempting to mutate their lifeless bodies into superhumans in order to defend him and his other twisted experiments. One of his first experiments in this regard was the superhuman known as Gold Bear, whose thoughts had been reduced to essentially whatever Afton had told him. They had been commanded by Afton to kill anybody who got too close to his base. However, the youngest of Afton's 3 children had been playing outside one stormy day, and Gold Bear incorrectly recognised him as an intruder, unceremoniously killing them. The story wasn't over yet, however, as their spirit breached Gold Bear's slightly corrupted and lifeless mind and possessed them. Unfortunately, when Afton discovered this, he chained up his own son in his lab, bringing in more and more children over multiple months, killing them and using a mix of magic and chemicals to try and recreate what happened to his son. When this finally worked, after hundreds if not thousands of tests, it was to a girl called Cassidy, who shared the body with Afton's son and started using her powers to recruit more of Afton's experiments to finally take down Afton once and for all. Hey guys, Mech Knight here, and I gotta say, I wouldn't say it's my favourite of the episode, but it's pretty high up there, and I gotta say this is a pretty balanced episode in terms of how much I like all the drawings, because I do think all of them, well, they're all up there in terms of my favourite drawings, and this one, I knew I wanted it to be set at night time, both because this is less of like your regular superhero, more of like an anti-hero, and I knew it would be a good contrast, because I would be making the character mostly like yellow and orange, because, you know, Golden Freddy is kind of obvious, but I almost feel like I could have gone further with it. I like this drawing in general, but in terms of Golden Freddy as a superhero, it works. But in terms of the lore I laid out for it, I feel like I almost could have gotten further. I have exposed muscle on one of the arms. I feel like I could have done that with some of the face, have even more wires wrapping around it, even covering some parts of it. I have these like test tubes sticking out of the neck. I think that could have been cool to put in more places. But at the end of the day, I do really like this drawing, and I hope you guys do too. The superhero known as Entity was once a digital security apparatus made by a group of heroes to guard a prison they'd built for the worst of the worst supervillains, which they had jokingly called the Pizzeria, and the name had stuck. Unfortunately, the prison eventually experienced multiple mass breakouts and was abandoned, with all the villains having escaped, except for one. Entity stayed there, constantly guarding the one villain who had been unable to escape due to their cell's heightened security, Mimic Lord. The villain was once a regular man named Edwin, who had went mad experimenting on himself after the death of both his wife, Fiona, and son, David. He started injecting himself with both technology and various animal genetics, giving himself the ability to mimic both the appearances and voices of others, which he used to go on a major crime spree. Eventually, he had spent so much time mimicking angry and bitter criminals that he went insane, claiming to have become unable to feel any emotion besides rage. That was when all the superheroes who helped to build the pizzeria helped to lock him up there. Eventually, however, their rage had boiled up so much trapped in their cell that it gave them the ability to escape their heightened security. And, despite it seeming like a terrible situation, one of the most notorious criminals back on the run, it at least meant that Entity was free to work alongside other heroes, using their electrical and digital superpowers to help the other heroes lock up Mimic Lord, for good this time. Now this is probably my favourite drawing from this episode. I knew when I came up with the lore for this that even though this is a superheroes episode, I couldn't just draw the entity on their own. I had to draw them in a face-off against Mimikord, aka our supervillain version of the Mimic. And I really like the lore I laid out for Edwin as the Mimic, how he mutated himself. I really like that. And overall, I think this is my favourite, not just because I really like the action in it, but I do think that the entity might have actually, like, the coolest superhero design, maybe that I've ever done on the channel now that I think about it. And I originally, when I thought of this drawing, I thought about them fighting in the prison, or maybe, like, in the sewers connected to the prison. That would make more sense for the lore. But as I was figuring out poses to do for these two characters while they were fighting, this one came across and it was quite different from other poses I'd done when I do drawings of two characters fighting. And I really liked it, so I just did it. And then that gave me the idea for Entity kind of like pushing them into this building and them to be up in the air, which is what it looked like. So after that, I just added an explosion because, you know, explosions are cool and stuff. And overall, I think this drawing is probably my favourite because there's just so much action in it. And I'm going to try and get more action with my backgrounds and, like, my poses and stuff in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. After Mimikord finally managed to escape the pizzeria, he eventually managed to create a virus to corrupt one of America's strongest superhero teams, the Glamrocks. This team had been one of those to help create the pizzeria, and Mimikord's virus made them all become wild and corrupted, except for one, the leader of the team, Growlbear. He was immune to the virus due to his powers, and he teamed up with a brand new superhero sidekick to try and save the rest of his team from the control that Mimikord now had over them. One of the heroes who had been infected was named Squawk Chick. She was the strategist of her team, and her main superpower, unlike other heroes, where things like super strength and speed and durability are side powers, her main power was her incredible endurance and durability, and she of course still had secondary powers of enhanced strength, speed, and even sonic shrieks that she could use to stun foes. The reason she was so hard for Growlbear to trap was because of her skills of deception, luring Growlbear away from wherever her next crime would be. Like I kind of talked about in the last drawing, throughout this video I was trying to focus on improving my backgrounds, because I feel like a lot of the time my backgrounds are really generic, especially in like superhero and kaiju episodes, where I just do like buildings, and all my buildings always look the same. Seriously, go back on some of my videos, especially the old ones, all the buildings look the same. If you ever look at last year's Kaiju, I mean, yeah, it's pretty bad. And even with other drawings, it's always just grass and trees. So I wanted to make these more unique. Obviously, with superheroes, it's a bit more freeing, because superheroes are gonna, like, go on a lot of different adventures and fights. So it makes sense. I gave this one kind of like a speaker background with a crowd in the back. And in terms of the design itself, yeah, I like it. I don't really have much else to say about it, though. It is just Glamrock Chica as a superhero. Anyway, let's go on to the last drawing of the episode. Brawlhair was one of Afton's experiments that had happened after the Gold Bear incident. Now that Afton was missing a powerful guard, he had killed a young child named Jeremy and mutated their body into a brawler using some rabbit genes. Luckily, Brawlhair would eventually be found by another of Afton's unfortunate experiments, which eventually led to a team-up between all the heroes who had ever been wronged by Afton, and the night that would end the cruel supervillain forever. Brawlhair had a suit commissioned by other superheroes to help him in this battle, and he even learned how to use a special axe that he forged for himself, but would be especially useful in the fight against Afton. Of course, his main ability was his super strength, as he was intended to be a brawler. However, unlike most brawlers where it's situated in his arms, Brawlhair was actually relatively balanced, While he was of course very powerful with his arms, he also had extremely powerful legs that he would use to fight off supervillains. Now this drawing is probably my least favourite of the episode, but that's not to say I don't like it. I do actually like it a fair bit. It just seems rather formulaic compared to my others. I talked about wanting to change up the background a bit, and I did do this one. I kind of made it all one colour to make the character stand out even more. But at the end of the day, this is probably just my least favourite, and that's less because I don't like this one, more just because I like the other drawings in this video so much, and I don't really have much to say about it. I knew I wanted to make it like a brawler, kind of bulky, because I don't know why, but I always saw Bonnie as kind of like the bulkiest out of the 4 original animatronics. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I'll be sure to make a sequel if it gets a good enough response, and I'll see you guys in the next one.